Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rakha HaKodash, and double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings to the house of David, which is the elect. And just something real quick, I want to touch on this article and also a video from today. Trump had a press conference in the Oval Office as he was signing some executive orders. There was a question that was asked regarding the directive that the Secretary of the Department of War, right, and that's what they call it now, Pete Hegseth made an order to all of the generals of America all throughout Babylon to come meet at Virginia, right? And everybody basically is wondering what the reason was for. Actually, let me just show that real quick. So I just went to Google and I just typed in Pete Hegseth emergency meeting tweet because I was looking for the tweet that I saw, but this shall do. It says reports of an emergency meeting for hundreds of U.S. generals and admirals ordered by Secretary of War, right, Pete Hegseth, were first broken by the Washington Post, not by Hegseth himself, on Twitter, now known as X. On September 25th, which is today, Hegseth X account instead featured a response to a different story about military panels. Okay, so reading on, it says the emergency meeting and the controversy surrounding it is summarized as followed. The meeting has summoned approximately 800 senior U.S. military leaders, including all brigadier generals and above, to meet at Marine Corporate Base Quantico in Virginia for the following week. So I believe they're supposed to meet on Tuesday. Right. It says secrecy and concerns. The purpose of the gathering was not disclosed to attendees, many of whom were based worldwide. The lack of information led to confusion and alarm among military officials. Defense officials also raised concerns about gathering so many top commanders in one place. So, this, like I said, this just happened today, which, as you just read, this wasn't something that was, spoken about by Hegseth himself, right? But it was a news that was broken by the media. Now, what is also interesting about that is last week you had Hegseth, the Pentagon rather, Pentagon made all of the news people, right? Sign makes news. Yeah. So, I just typed in Pentagon makes reporters sign and then just finished it because this also just happened, a few days ago. It says, as of September 2025, the Pentagon is requiring credentialed journalists to sign a pledge to not report or use any information that has not been officially authorized for release. This new restriction has drawn significant criticism from multiple news organizations and press freedom advocates who say it violates the constitutional protections of free press. Right. So it says the pledge, the new policy distributed to reporters via a 17-page memo, requires journalists to sign a form agreeing not to obtain or use, quote, unauthorized material. This includes both classified material and a broad category of controlled unclassified information. So the question would be, why would the Pentagon require this by journalists, right? Why would they make them sign, right, some some paperwork saying that they won't use or or obtain, right, any quote unquote unauthorized material. Right? It says the consequences: any journalist who refuses to sign the pledge or fails to abide by its rules will have the Pentagon press credentials revoked. This will cut off access to the building and officials. So now, right, you had that happen a couple days ago, and then all of a sudden you have this emergency meeting, okay, which the news first broke by Washington Post, but Hexeth himself, didn't say anything about it. All right, so that would, like I said, that would beg the question, what is actually going on, right? What do they know that they're not telling, the American population, right? What type of intel, or what um, uh, 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 type of things are about to take place, that's going to transpire, that they're trying to, cover up. And, of course, we understand that we're in a time of war, right? We're in a time of confusion, as the scripture says. There should be a uproars of the people in the world, all right, in confusion, amongst the heads, the leaders. So, this is why we continue to, just trust in the word, right, and lean on the word of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. All right, so let me get this now. So it says NATO is at war with Russia, says Kremlin, as drone incursions continue in Europe. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Thursday, per a public telegram board, that NATO and said Thursday, that NATO and the European Union are waging war against Russia using Ukraine as a proxy, and are directly participating in the conflict, which, this is something that's been happening. Lavrov's comments follow repeated Kremlin claims that Western military and financial support for Ukraine amounts to direct hostility towards Russia. And this is why you're seeing a lot of, activity, okay, on these NATO borders with Russia, basically, testing their limits. Okay, and you already had the Article 4 been invoked by, at least, 2 or 3 different NATO countries. Earlier today, you had U.S. jets had to scramble off of the coast of Alaska to intercept Russian fighter jets. So once again, there's a lot of things that are happening, right? I believe it was yesterday when Trump was asked, should the NATO or European countries shoot down any Russian aircrafts that violates their airspace, and he said, "What? Yes, I do. Yeah, I believe that they should shoot it down." So now we're entering into basically an escalated point in this conflict, which, as we've been saying, which is scriptural, this is only going to continue to escalate, because Yahweh Shai, forewarned us. The scriptures tells us that, there's going to be wars, right? And this war is going to, like I said, escalate to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, right? The Armageddon, as it's talked about in Revelation, all right, the mountain of troops. So reading on, it says the announcement also comes amid repeated drone incursions into NATO's allies' airspace. NATO warned Russia on Tuesday that it was prepared to defend every inch of allied territories after Estonia said that Russian fighters' jets had violated its airspace last week. The incursion followed a similar incident in Poland earlier this month, where around 20 drones from Moscow entered Polish airspace. Just this week, Denmark reported multiple drones accidents at critical infrastructure points, as a Russian landing ship was discovered lurking off the Danish coast. Okay, so let's jump now. It says Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky on Tuesday said that he had been surprised by President Donald Trump's comments earlier this week, where he said that he believed Ukraine could win back its territory and potentially more from Russia, It was a surprise for me. You're right, Zelensky told Fox News on Tuesday. It was a very positive signal that from the side that Trump and America will be with us to end this war. Now, remember when Trump, within the last few months, he was speaking on a totally different tune, right? And a lot of people is seeing how Trump made a complete 180, right? A complete 180 on his rhetoric and what he was saying when it came to this Russia and Ukraine war. All right, before he was saying that he was telling Zelensky that you don't hold any cards, right? You need to make concessions. You're going to need to give up some land, okay? Because you can't beat Putin, right? You're not going to be able to beat Russia. All right. And he was telling them that you're, like I said, you're not holding any cards. Remember that whole little theater that they did between Trump and Zelensky in the White House a few months ago. So now all of a sudden he's saying, though, that Ukraine could win this war and they can actually take back all of their lands and even more land. So once again, what's actually going on. And, for us, like I said, this just goes to show you how Esau is really just looking foolish. OK, I mean, he's looking real foolish and really, really looking as if he doesn't even know what he's doing. All right. Real sloppy, as the scripture says. Is there any more wisdom in Teman? Reading on, it says in a Truth Social post, Trump had backed Ukraine in its ability to fight and win all of Ukraine back to in its original form. He had also criticized Russia, calling it a paper tiger. The statement represents a big shift from when Trump gave Vladimir Putin the red carpet welcome in Alaska during their meeting last month. Putin ally fires nuclear warning at Trump's U.S. Top Kremlin official Dmitry Medvedev issued a fiery nuclear warning to the U.S. after Ukrainian President Zelensky said officials in Moscow should learn where their nearest bomb shelter is if they don't end Russia's war. Zelensky, in an interview with Axios, said U.S. President Donald Trump had given his explicit backing to Ukrainian strikes on Russian targets. Now, remember also, right? Because people don't forget, right? Remember when Trump was talking, hella shit about the Biden administration and how they were giving, Zelensky, weapons to fight this war, right? And he was saying how Biden, should end this war by basically stop giving all of this, tax-paying money to Ukraine. Now, all of a sudden, he's back in Ukraine and he's giving them even more, arsenal to strike deeper into, Russia, which is only going to, cause Russia to use even more of their, artillery. OK, they showcased it before the Oreshnik missile, ICBM. You see, and they also got nukes, right? Russia is the world's largest nuclear, has the largest nuclear, arsenal. So it says Russian targets such as energy infrastructure and arms factories, and that if Kyiv receives more long-range American weaponry, then we will use it. And remember, Russia also already said if they get attacked by NATO's missiles or Americans' missiles, then they're going to take it as if America attacked them. So this is why you had Lavrov said that they are, NATO is at war with Russia. The Kyiv drug addict said the Kremlin should know where a bomb shelter is so its occupants can hide when it's when he uses long range American weapons. Medvedev, who is the deputy chairman to Russian Vladimir Putin on Kremlin Security Council and himself a former president and prime minister of Russia in a post on X. What the freak needs to know, which he's speaking about Zelensky, is that Russia can use weapons that a bomb shelter won't protect against. Americans should also keep this in mind. You see, that right there. And that's true, because what is written is that America, once it gets hit with these missiles, there isn't going to be any place to run. There isn't going to be any place to hide. There isn't going to be a bomb shelter, to protect you, right? There isn't going to be a fallout shelter to keep you safe. All right. The whole landmass of America, Babylon the Great, is going to be utterly destroyed. And there is, like I said, everything that's going on, with the Pentagon making the journalists sign that, form. And then you have, like I said, with Pete Hegseth, commissioning all of the generals and admirals to come meet in an emergency meeting next week on Tuesday. So if he made that decree today, which is Thursday, and he's saying that they all got to meet by Tuesday, that obviously shows that there is something happening behind the scene. Now, what I also found interesting, concerning that, is while I was watching this, right, President Trump signs this executive order. You had a journalist ask about that directive that the Secretary of War gave. Now, listen to how he responds to it, and then also how J.D. Vance responds to it. It is as if, they are trying to hide something. Okay, because if there was nothing to hide, then they would have just, came out and said, there's nothing to hide, whatever. But when you see it, you'll get the sense of what I'm speaking about, right? It just seems off. It seems funny, right? It seems as if, they know something in which what they're not trying to tell the public.
Secretary Hegseth is inviting military leaders from all around the country on Tuesday. Will you also be there?
From all around the country to what?
To Virginia. He's inviting the generals and admirals to Virginia for a big meeting.
Well, I know. I love it. I think it's great. Let him be friendly. Let him be friendly with the generals and admirals from all over the world. Why is there something? No, but is there something wrong with it?
What is it about? Will you be there personally as well? And what is it about?
Well, I'll be there if they want me, but why is that such a big deal? The fact that we're getting along with the generals and admirals from all.
Now listen to that, right? That answer doesn't even, what he's saying doesn't even answer the question. The fact that we're getting along with all of the generals, and obviously you're going to get along with your own generals and admirals of your army. Okay, it's not as if it's generals of a different nation. It's the generals of America. Okay, so they're asking him, why is he doing that? He didn't answer why he's doing. He said, "Oh, is there something wrong? Well, why is that such a big deal?" Right? Keep listening.
Remember, I'm the president of peace. Well, I'll be there if they want me, but why is that such a big deal? The fact that we're getting along with the generals and admirals from all. Remember, I'm the president of peace. It's good to get along. It's good. You act like this is a bad thing. Isn't it nice that people are coming from all over the world to be with us?
It's not particularly unusual that generals who report to the Secretary of War and then to the President of the United States are coming to speak with the Secretary of War. It's actually not unusual at all, and I think it's odd that you guys have made it into such a big story.
Yes, look at that. See, they're trying to deflect, right? And it's very interesting because usually these individuals don't talk, right? All those people that are standing up, they usually don't talk unless Trump asks them to, say something, right? To speak on it. But the fact that you had, the vice president, J.D. Vance, just hop in and say something. And then what he says, he tries to deflect and say, oh, it's not odd. You're odd for asking the question. Like, you act like this isn't, something, some major news, especially given the time that we're in, especially given the heightened tension, that is happening between NATO, Russia, and, in America. You see? You just had this, what I just read, right? You just had this rhetoric take place between Russia's right high, officials say, read that last part again. What the freak needs to know is that Russia can use weapons a bomb shelter won't protect against. Weapons like what? That what is called the Satan 2, the Sarmat, right? 2. Okay, nuclear weapons. And it says Americans should also keep that in mind. So this is clearly a warning, right? It's clearly a signal. And the fact that P. Hexlef just did this is a signal as well. And then you got these, talking heads trying to make it seem as though, there's nothing to see here. There's no issues here. Nothing concerning here. Come on. All right. hey, we can see right through this. Let me run that back a little bit.
That generals who report to the Secretary of War and then to the President of the United States are coming to speak with the Secretary of War. It's actually not unusual at all, and I think it's odd that you guys have made it into such a big story.
Is it a big story?
I don't think it is, sir.
I would.
Is it a big story? I don't think it is. Come on. All right. Yeah, who are you fooling, man? You're not fooling us. And you have a lot of people, okay, that are in America that are also, looking at this and it's raising eyebrows. You see? Because once again, is there any wisdom in teaming? All right, your enchantments are not working. Okay, you're wearied in your counsels, and now you're just trying to deflect and make it as if what is being seen is not actually happening. Matter of fact, in that movie, I think it was also a book, but I think they made it into a movie. What is it called? 1984, right? There was a quote that basically, said something to the effect of the last commandment or last command is to disregard everything your eyes, and your ears are telling you, something to that effect. Let me see if I can find it. Right, here it goes. It says, what was the final command of the party in 1984? It says the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final and most essential command. So reject the evidence, right, of what you're seeing happening, what you're seeing taking place, and what you're hearing taking place. The party's command is to reject that. Okay? If you see, emergency meetings happening, which has never happened before, okay, in the history of the Pentagon, where you have the Secretary of War now, it's not the Secretary of Defense, but you just heard Trump say, oh, he's the President of Peace, but you just changed the Department, right, of Defense to Department of War. All right. In the time of war, there could be no peace. In the time of peace, there could be no war. Right. So how are you going to call yourself the President of Peace if you are, using terminology of war? But he's telling you that, that's not news. That's nothing big. OK, even though that was an unprecedented, act. And then also, like I said, with, having a journalist sign that form to say that they can't, release any information that is not authorized by the Pentagon. Well, what is that? Which is a clear violation of the constitutional, as right of, freedom of press. So what does that show you? That show you that they're, they basically want to control the narrative of what's about to happen. Right. They don't want the press to, say anything. All right. Or to print anything or put out anything that isn't aligned with the narrative that the administration or the government wants the people to know, because they want the people to be willing and they want them to back what is about to happen as far as this war. OK, and this is why they about to crack down on free speech. Right. They're about to crack down on anybody, alternative media, all that. You see, so Let's see if there's a little bit more on that.
I think it's no, but isn't it a good story? I mean, we're respected from all over the world as a military force. I rebuilt the military during my first term.
He keeps talking about everybody else, right? But this wasn't an order, from all these other countries. This is an order of all of generals that are all around the world that are Americans to come back to the United States to have this in-person meeting. So it's clearly a sign of something way bigger than what they're trying to showcase. But that's pretty much it on that. I just want to touch on this. But like what was that Medvedev said, right? The Americans should know that Russia has weapons. Russia has weapons that a bunker, right, a bomb shelter cannot protect from. So let's get this here in the book of Isaiah 34, verse start at 5. It says, I'm gonna read this in NLT. It says, and when my sword has finished its work in the heavens, it will fall upon Edom, the nation I have marked for destruction. The sword of the Lord is drenched with blood and covered with fat, the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of rams prepared for a sacrifice. Yes, the Lord will offer a sacrifice in the city of Basra. He will make a mighty slaughter in Edom. Even the strong men, even men as strong as wild oxen will die, the young men alongside with veterans. The land will be soaked with blood and the soil enriched with fat. For it is the day of Yahweh's vengeance, the year when Edom will be paid back for all it did to Israel. See that? And this was a prophecy, right, that Isaiah had concerning Babylon the Great, before the Roman Empire, before the Greek Empire, before Israel was ever in captivity, okay, to the Edomites. And this is how you know that this is a prophecy that has not yet been fulfilled, because Edom still has not been paid back. Still has not been paid back for all it's done to Israel. Okay. Verse 9, the streams of Edom will be filled with burning pitch, and the ground will be covered with fire. The judgment of Edom will never end. The smoke of its burning will rise forever, meaning a long time. Read that in Revelation 18 chapter. The land will lie deserted from generation to generation. No one will live there anymore. Okay. And for guys like vocab that say, Edom already, has been judged. Well, the scriptures says that no one will live in Edom anymore. Right. And once again, this is not talking about the ancient land of Edom, but speaking about Babylon the Great, America, which is ran and ruled by Edom. So what I did is I asked Gronk, are there people today living in the area where ancient Edomites dwelt? Okay. So this is to show you that land right over there is still being dwelt. So so that judgment clearly isn't speaking about that land. Right. The judgment that we just read in Isaiah 34, it says, yes, the region where the ancient Edomites dwelt, primarily in the mountainous highlands of the southern Jordan, east of the Araba Valley, between the Dead Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba, Salakia for mispronunciation, and parts of southern Israel, such as the Negev desert, is densely populated today with a mix of modern inhabitants. Okay. And it goes to tell you how many people are living. It says the area is home to over 1 million Jordanians overall, including Arabs, Bedouins, and Christian minorities. Okay. So that place is densely populated, right? The land of Edom, right? Which is also known as Petra. All right. That region over there, right? As it says here, this includes cities and towns like Petra, a major tourist site built by the Nabateans, which wasn't built by the Nabateans. It was built by the ancient Edomites. Okay. And then afterwards, you have the Nabateans inhabit that land, which are, Arab, people. But the point is that the land the land of ancient Edom is still have inhabitants there, and there will be no reason, okay, for a judgment for the land of Edom to be judged, because Israel never, was persecuted by Edomites in the land of Edom, the ancient land of Edom. We were persecuted by Edomites right here in Babylon the Great. And that is where the Lord, America, right? That is where the Lord is going to judge. That is where the Lord is going to recompense Edom. Okay. So that's pretty much it. You can read the rest of Isaiah, the 34th chapter, but I just want to touch on that. Lord willing, this is edifying unto the elect, giving all praises to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem, Rakakwadash. Shalom.